Alright, EA Ermor turned 59. Our war with Agarthan has started. We also receive a messenger from Ulm. So they want 16 of any gem for a hammer. So there you go. That's what they consider a fair price. This is a bit on the expensive side for us since, we can produce hammers ourselves and we already have some hammers. And Ulm gets a forge bonus. So I think this is probably more looking at a price that would be useful for people that just can't forge a hammer themselves, right? They don't have the earth pathing, but definitely interesting information. We're not going to take advantage of that offer. We could also potentially try to negotiate them down, but like I said, we kind of have enough hammers. We might make a few more here or there, but yeah, I am a bit back and forth in terms of the utility of hammers. I think they're perhaps not as useful as a lot of players think, and really probably better thought of as a way to transmute earth gems into other gem types, which is of varying use depending on what nation you are and what kind of gem income you're looking at. In the long run, they do provide savings, but you need to forge a lot of items before they actually provide savings. So anyway, we are searching for gems. Speaking of gems, this does not work out for us. Bringing in Vine Ogres for the skeletons, dire important, always good news. I was talking about how all those death gems Therados was going to be getting, they could be doing dastardly things with. Well, they've done a dastardly thing, so this is Burden of Time, which is going to make all of the living units in the world, as well as our population, grow old prematurely and die. This is not great for us, especially because we're kind of a nation of old men in terms of who's in charge. And we do rely on gold like any living nation, and our population dying off is not great. That said, we do have growth 3, so that's going to help, offset this a little bit. And I do think this is a bit of, in terms of like bad things that a undead nation could do with all their death gems, this one is not as bad as some of the other options. Utter Dark is the kind of you lose really quickly if you don't deal with it. So between this and Utter Dark, we're glad it's this. But still, this is bad news. Hopefully, we'll have to take a look and see if the Dispel attempt on their engine for things like this, Well of Misery, got eliminated. So yeah, we're doing our spying. Doing some water site searching remotely, doesn't work out. Bringing in some regular skeletons. This is primarily to provide bodyguards for our white mages. Since our white mages are surrounded by a cold aura, they just freeze any living troops to death, including our Equite, since we don't have cold resistance on the Bless. I do think, if you can squeeze it in, there's a lot of different things always that you're trying to accomplish with your build and your Bless. But if you're early age Ermor, a little bit of cold resistance, on your Equite, I do think are worthwhile, particularly because it's early age, so you're likely to bump into Niflheim anyhow. And then you get the added benefit of then being able to, put your best troops as bodyguards for your most important mages, which are going to be the white mages that you create. Assuming, of course, that you go that route, certainly there are other things you could do with your death gems, and of course, yeah, this is what we're doing with some of our death gems. So it's the other option. So we're just going to use like some regular undead as bodyguards for our white mages, trying to search for some arcane sites. Some astral sites. We do not find any. So yeah, not a good turn for us site searching. We don't really have any manual site searches. A lot of profits going up. We try to assassinate a Woodhenge Druid. This is a bit on the questionable side because this is just an independent. But I figured we had our assassin here. Yeah, I figured it would work out. It does work out for us pretty well. We got lucky there, definitely. But this does mean that we can take this province really easily, whereas Agarthan doesn't know that there's no commander there, well, assuming that there isn't another commander in the province. But anyway, our assassins didn't really have a lot of other options at the moment, so we decided to risk them, and it worked out for us. And then yeah, now we're using let's see, these are the Dustwalkers, and yeah, there's just one caveman here, so not really going to be an effective demonstration of how useful or not useful these Dustwalkers are, but they can at least take out one caveman PD. Of course, we do bump with Russ, right? So Russ is moving quite quickly. Wasn't actually expecting a bump with Russ here, because they're still trying to siege that fort, but right, they just split out a point buffer, and this prophet that we've seen is carrying some death gems for some reason, probably just using him as a gem reload for the army. But yeah, this guy's pretty fearsome, and while Dustwalkers are good. They're not like, killing a super combatant or a really heavy thug like this level of good, particularly because this guy's very resistant to fire, right? And that's going to be one of the main advantages that these Dustwalkers have. They have the heat aura, so they'd be able to put him to sleep, and then that 31 defense wouldn't matter. It would go away. But since he's not going to fall asleep, that 31 defense stays relevant, and I don't think we're able to drive it down all that much. We do drive it down like a good bit, but still, we drive it down to 22. You can see there's a pretty significant harassment penalty, but it just started so high that the Dustwalkers, they don't have, they're being reduced from routing. They actually have like decent attack skill. Well, okay, slightly better than average attack skill. So Dustwalkers are good troops, but they're still just troops, so we get spanked there by Russ. We do at least manage to kill the point buffer. Not that, Jade Sorceresses are a bit on the expensive side, and it's independent mage, so they can't have that many of them. I'm sure that stings a little bit, but they do come away with the province, so I'd say that that worked out better for them, and perhaps a sign of things to come. We can see that we're already starting to bump up against Russ. So we'll have to see, how they feel about us attacking Agartha while they are also attacking Agartha. Yeah, and then here's one of our swarm raids against a little bit of Ko-Oni province defense. This is actually pretty light Ko-Oni province defense, I think, and we're really going to hope that we manage to get the commander, because Ko-Oni are dangerous enough that they will be able to turn around a swarm raid. Yeah, you can see the Ko-Oni are just chewing their way through. Thankfully, we managed to wrap and kill the commander before they kill our commander, so I do think this is going to work out for us. But that was a little on the dangerous side. Yeah, so swarm raid works out for us there, but certainly could have failed. I think this is probably another swarm raid. No, this is our Equite raiding group. Pretty high confidence on this, particularly because there's no province defense here and no leadership for that lone umbral. So that works out for us without loss. Of course, we're not really up against anything, so no great feat there. This is probably, this is just our, no, this is swarm raid. So let's see. We're up against 6 province defense, kind of a weaker province defense type, although in this case, light cavalry a little scarier than normal since they're fast and they throw javelins. So if they choose to throw them, at our commander, there's every possibility that, we get sniped. They're throwing more javelins. This is not looking good. So I think this is going to be a case where, one swarm caster, not enough against not a particularly great PD type. So the more experience that I get with swarm raiding, the more that you really have to be up against pretty light province defense in order for one swarm caster to work out. 2 swarm casters, I feel like, will take out 6 province defense for most PD types pretty reliably. But that starts to get expensive if you're spending 2 gems per province just against 6 province defense, and it doesn't actually take that much PD investment to then again start to make 2 casts of swarm look a little more dicey. So while I do think swarm raiding is pretty effective, it is counterable. It's not the end all be all, but that's kind of what we're going for, and so far it's gone decently effectively. And then speaking of raiding, this looks like some undead raiding. Nope, I lied. So I thought this would be skelly spam, since that's often what Xibalba does. But these guys, actually, they look like they're probably cap-only mages. Since they are quite powerful, they certainly could skelly spam if they wanted to, but I think instead they're going to make fire elementals, because they have quite a few fire gems, and they're going with Phoenix power. So I think this is going to work out for them. It looks like they are attacking Therados here. Yeah, so quite a bit of Barbarian province defense, though. A bit of a PD dump, but Barbarians against Fire Elementals, not going to be so great. The Fire Elementals don't love the cold, but then with Skelly Spam behind it, these are very powerful mages, although a bit scary to be risking these guys unsupported as raiders, but maybe Xibalba feels like they're doing well enough, they can risk them that way. But that is definitely very interesting information. I don't think we've seen Xibalba and Therados fighting before. The bad people do not have particularly long lifespans, so they're not going to love Burden of Time. Now that said, Burden of Time just went up this turn, so it can't be in response to it, but still, I think Burden of Time is only going to encourage Xibalba to attack Therados even more. Of course, trying to go underwater as a land nation, always pretty challenging, so they might only be able to kick them back into the ocean, assuming they're successful at all. And then we have our more militia type troops, no Ostati here. but they're just up against a little bit of Slinger PD, so I think that's going to work out just fine. And it does with no losses. I will say I am definitely pro putting 6 province defense in most provinces, but if it's only Slinger PD, you might just want to only invest like 1 province defense, because slingers by themselves stop basically nothing, and then Russ does not slow down. They continue. They're taking the fort, right? So they split out their profit, to go take that other province, that bordering province, and then they're sending in a ton of stuff against basically nothing. There's a few mages in there, but I think even if Agartha gave him gems, they're just, there's no way. They did give him gems, so here you go. How does a single Earth Elemental do against Skin Shifters? There it goes. So in case there's any confusion about how that was going to go. Skin Shifters are definitely scary, the thing of nightmares, and Russ takes no losses, and they take this fort. They have a pretty significant force now on one of our borders where we don't really have a ton of troops yet. So, we do need to be somewhat concerned that Russ may decide to continue just pushing directly into us. And while we do have a lot of mages in those forts, so we're going to be able to put up more of a resistance than this. 49 of these Skin Shifters, we definitely don't have the units available to really challenge this in the field in this area. And then of course old age plagues us, and that's going to be an ongoing theme now that Burden of Time is up. I don't think we lose anybody yet, but we will. So we have some unexpected events. Let's see, an Augur lost an eye. That's fine. And then we catch a witch, and so we get some misfortune. We also get some magic scales. I'll kind of take that trade. We're already pretty deep into misfortune anyway. And then some patrolling, and I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. The main thing is we are pushing on Agartha in both directions. Sadly, the only raid of ours that failed was the one that was, I guess this one was also designed to disguise, what our army is actually going to be rocking. So I feel like it's not really, we were planning on waiting the 1 turn before moving our army out, but it's not really worth waiting another turn. So, they're going to get to see, oh, actually, no, I take that back. So we're not moving everything else out. We are just moving, a portion of this army out. We're leaving behind a lot of the infantry and a lot of the mages. So I don't know how necessary this really is in this case. Because, Agartha really just doesn't have all that much with which to resist us. This is a lot of stuff that we're bringing against them. With the notable exception that, Mortality Grasps is at home. And it's not like, that's ever gone poorly, where we send a giant army into the caves of Agartha and, Mortality Grasps slaps us in the face. So this is a different army that we're sending in with more mage support, more research. So hopefully it'll go fine, but definitely some trepidation there. The other thing, too, is that we may not actually send everything south. I'm not 100% sure about that, because we are starting to recruit quite a bit of stuff up here in the north, in our capital, and we left behind a good amount of our Equite, some of our Devils, because we do see, quite a few Skin Shifters on our border. We do not have a non-aggression pact with Russ. We haven't really even had much contact with Russ all game long. So, we just bumped with them. We knew there was going to be some contention over the Agarthan lands, and we're not really sure which way things are going to go. So it's quite possible that we're going to have to start fighting, up here in our north. And again, the amount of stuff that we're committing against Agartha is way more than we really need to. Now, there's a good chance that we'll have to. If we fight Russ, we'll definitely have to fight them in the south here as well, since that's where their main forces are. So it's not so much that we're bringing all of this stuff to defeat Agartha. We're bringing all of this stuff in case we end up having to fight Russ. But if we have to fight Russ, that also means that we're going to have to fight them up here. And possibly also, right, they could come through this cave system and, start attacking our holdings over here, which in retrospect, perhaps not doing as much recruitment over in this area as I should be. We are at least recruiting up some gladiators relatively slowly. I don't love gladiators, but they are a pretty effective deterrent force, and they will provide, something that can hold the gate in a siege battle, and we definitely have the mage support here to do quite a bit of damage. And of course, we are gambling that there is no more leadership here. We don't see any more leadership here, and this mountain pass has thankfully opened. Not really sure why that is. It is late winter, but Agartha has taken heat. We've taken heat. Of course, Ill Winter is up. And it looks like Well of Misery has not gone down, so either that Dispel failed or, the Dispel attempt hasn't quite happened yet. And then, of course, Burden of Time is up. So, yeah, we've got some nasty globals here that we're going to have to deal with. But when I say deal with, you can see that the plan currently is to just live with them because we have no Astral Pearls banked. We're only getting 7 a month. So, maybe if we stop doing things with Astral Pearls, we could, get rid of them. But there's a lot of things that we want to do with Astral Pearls. Speaking of Burden of Time and things we want to do with Astral Pearls, sadly, one of our, mind hunters has, gotten a disease, no doubt from old age, and is dying. So we're going to start to see more and more of that as Burden of Time grinds on. And for the moment is just going to have to be something that we're going to have to live with. So yeah, I think that more or less covers what we're up to. We do see that Abyssia looks like they're getting pretty serious about attacking Vanheim. This is, a serious amount of burning ones. And, Ulm is looking somewhat resurgent, so this does seem like a good time for Abyssia to be attacking Vanheim. We know that Vanheim just took that, fairly significant loss recently, and Ulm has been doing a good job of pushing them, out of their core territory. We can also see that Russ, brought up that siege strength that we'd seen in Helheim, so Helheim is probably relatively undefended at this point. I mean, other than the fact that there's plenty of skin shifters between us and Helheim. But, depending on what Russ's relations are, like, say, with Macone, potentially, right, there are other people that could jump in and swing this war in other directions. And then probably the other big thing is that war between Therados and Xibalba. It looks like it's probably winding down and that possibly Menchaca was also involved, right? We know that Therados has a fairly strong presence along this coastline. But it looks like, that Menchaca has maybe cut off some of their more inward holdings. Because while this is a Therodian fort, it has been cracked, and I imagine that Xibalba is going to be retaking it or taking it relatively soon. So we may have missed that war, or, perhaps it's still ongoing. We're not really sure. And yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 59. All right, EA Ermor, turn 60. We finish research and enchantment, level 8. This does provide us with a lot of elemental resistance spells, mass regeneration, and liches, although in retrospect, we don't really have the death gems for liches, and the elemental resistances, I think a lot of them we can get from alteration, and mass regeneration is useful for us, but as a human nation, not as relevant, so perhaps it wasn't the best idea to go all the way up to enchantment level 8. Still, lots of good spells there, so it's not like it's a bad thing to have, just perhaps there were better things to have in other schools. But at this point, I still hate not having the full army-wide elemental resistant buffs available, and if you don't have them available, it definitely does make you vulnerable to battlefield wipes for your armies, so, it is nice to have. We try to do some remote site searching. This does not work out for us. We really would like to increase our astral income, and, it's just, yeah, the game is not cooperating with us right now. We're bringing in some more Vine Ogres, doing our spying, of course. Some regular site searching also does not work out. And then we witness a battle between Russ and Agartha. And yeah, this is definitely, cutting into, possible gains. Russ is moving pretty quickly. We've seen this fellow before. Of course, he has no point buffing friend since we took care of that. But, there's only one province defense here, so that's definitely going to work out for Russ. And just to double check, yeah, no problem for that guy. He is a bit on the fearsome side. Although it is interesting that, Russ is using their prophet when they're also using, quite a bit of sacreds, right? So that they're not able to get that divine bless, but it doesn't really seem to be too much of a problem for them. And then, yeah, this is us moving forward. Not really a second army, but basically just sacred reinforcements here in that place where we failed with our swarm raid. So yeah, this is going to work out for us. We probably will lose a little bit of infantry. No, actually we don't lose anyone. So that's nice. And we don't really reveal too much about what our plans are in terms of our research. And then this is our commander that we send in against those Vinemen that hopefully have no leadership, and they do not. So right, they're magic beings, no magic leadership. They just fall apart, and our commander should come away with that. Yeah, we don't retreat too early. Hooray. So that actually works out for us, and I'd forgotten that is a province that provides 2 death gems a turn, so that actually was a really good use of our assassin, I would say. Good work past me. Because as early age Ermor, you do hunger for death gems, although really most any nation can use death gems, and This is quite a force. It doesn't really look like it's up against anything from Therados, so they chose not to contest this, which, makes sense. Looks like Xibalba has been doing quite a bit of blood hunting, and these beast bets, they actually might get his free spawn, I think. But these guys are definitely summons. The Aussies, or Ozolotls, however you say it, the murder kitties, they are pretty nasty. Lots of attacks per turn. They're sacred, so they're going to carry whatever sort of bless you have. They have pretty good stats and a good amount of hit points to begin with. A little low on the protection side, right? So they tend to be glass cannony, but they also fly. Their main downside, I would say, is that they're demons. So, if you have any anti-demon stuff, that's going to work out for you. And then kind of a grab bag of other summons. Pretty much, well, not only summons, they do have some bat troops. Yeah, just regular Xibalban warriors. These are pretty cheap and pretty awful. So, they're probably not going to contribute all that much. They do have some of their sacreds as well. It does look like some starvation here, so that's a bit on the sad side. But still, it's a really fearsome force with their pretender, the crazy bat lady. A little light in terms of the equipment, but probably just here mostly as a caster, right? So this is, just to make sure that they're reasonably well protected against random arrows and things like that. And this is going to be a pretty fearsome caster. Speaking of fearsome, it does actually have fear built in. And I would say that I'm very glad that this is not, headed our way, and that, we'll have to keep an eye on Xibalba. They are absolutely a player in this game. Let's just make sure, they do come away with it. They take a few losses, but nothing really too relevant. I'm sure they're happy to take a fort off of Therados. Speaking of Therados, old age plagues us as ever. And then, of course, we lose another mage to the Wild Hunt. And this one I think I just decided to risk. You're not guaranteed to be attacked, but we needed somebody to bless our raiders moving into this province. It is a valuable province, so we are glad to have it. It ended up not being defended, so we didn't really even need to send our priest in. But, we didn't know that at the time. It is a barbarian province, so there could have been a PD dump. Obviously, our priest does not come away with it there. And it probably won't be the last priest that we lose to the Wild Hunt. I honestly don't remember. So I hope that annoyance is bringing you joy, Pelagia, wherever you are. And we find some fire gems. That is nice, especially since we have misfortune. This is more misfortune-like. Some barbarian scouts, they're planning an attack. And hey, we actually get a little bit of extra gold, though not too much. And then we foresee a major event. This is the People's Deathmatch. So we actually got a 6-month warning, and now we're getting the 3-month warning, and we're still going to do nothing about it, so it doesn't really matter. And I will catch you guys after the cut. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. The main thing, of course, is we are making our attack on Agartha. Other than Mortality Grass, who is just hanging out, I don't think Agartha is really going to be able to stop us. We're bringing in a bunch more of our sacreds. We have, a lot of mages here. We've added Wailing Winds, to our army, as well as a bunch of skeletons. We still have a few fire elemental casters in here, I think. Flaming arrows. We've left in Serpent's Blessing, just in case. That's more from TNN. But really the main thing we're going to be relying on is Wailing Winds, as well as, a bunch of our sacreds. And we do have some Soul Slay in here, although perhaps not as much as I would like. Here's a Soul Slay fellow. So 2 Soul Slay fellows attached to a communion with some penetration gear. Not full penetration gear, though. So, we'll see how that goes. But I have pretty high hopes. And, the war against Agartha is more or less done once this attack finishes, because it looks like Russ has moved their other group of sacreds over, so they are going to focus on hitting this fort with everything they have. It's looking like they're not planning on pushing hard against us in 2 different directions, or maybe they have scouts in our territory and realize that hey, Ermor is sending an absolute boatload of stuff in this direction, and that we're going to need everything that we have in order to contest that. But you can see that Agartha has pretty much disappeared. Obviously they were in a really weak position, and they're being attacked by 2 people now, so this was never going to be a war that was going to work out for them. And really now the big question for us, 2 big questions, right? Always the question of what is Niflheim planning on doing? Because we still haven't really been able to catch any wars that involve them. I do think that Oceania still exists, units, but they're AI, so like I said, I don't think that's really going to be occupying too much of their time. Now they did just put up Illwinter, so that's going to make them a bit more of a target from some of their other neighbors. I think they have Saramesha bordering them here, and then Machaka and Jabalba are the other neighbors, but we know that Jabalba is at least somewhat busy, right, with Therados, although now I don't think they actually really share a border anymore, and like maybe they're thinking about attacking Femoria, so we're sending our scout up in that direction. But yeah, we basically we still don't really know what Niflheim is up to, and that is always on our mind. But also we are pretty concerned, about what Russ is going to be up to. Their capital is quite close to our capital, so if we go to war, it's going to be a fairly nasty war. In some ways, it would be maybe a good war for us, right? Because this war with Agartha is about to be finished. Abyssia, we're working quite closely with. We're sharing a global. I don't really have any desire to break that. So that kind of closes off our options here, more or less, to the west. Now, we do know that, Abyssia is planning an attack on Vanheim. And, we don't really have much of a border with Vanheim is the problem. And we share that border, like, with Abyssia. And we don't want to block Abyssia off from their own gains. That's not what a good ally does. So realistically, like, if we're going to help in this war with Vanheim, we'd probably have to attack Ulm next, and Ulm has managed to retake quite a bit of territory, including, I think, possibly some territory from Femoria, so I think Ulm and Femoria might be fighting at this point. So we are, trying to figure out, like, Femoria is at least somewhat big, but we don't really know a ton about them yet, and they don't look massive. So, potentially we could attack Ulm and, work our way through, fighting Femoria and also a little bit with Vanheim, helping out Abyssia, while also not, like, preventing opportunity for them to get some gains. And that's going to be a bit of an awkward war for us, but at least, we're going to be significantly stronger than Ulm, so that's pretty attractive. And it doesn't look like Femoria is like too much more powerful than us, at least in terms of size. So that's at least going to be a somewhat even conflict. And then Vanheim, of course, we know has taken some fairly serious losses, and we'll have an ally in that fight. So that's kind of where, our thoughts are going, assuming we don't get drawn into a conflict with Russ. But like I said, Russ does have a lot of territory. They are larger than us. I think both just in terms of raw province count, but also particularly in terms of number of capitals. They, significantly outnumber us. Although if we manage to take Agartha, that'll even out the odds a little more. But at this point, I am feeling that a war against Russ is not the end of the world, while I do think it's going to be kind of painful, right? These sacreds are capital only, and we are at least relatively close to Russ's capital. So possibly, if we manage to build up another army, Wailing Winds is going to be useful, although a little less useful since their sacreds do go berserk. But it's still a tough spell to fight against. So while it's going to be a dangerous war for both of us, since our capitals are close to each other, our sacreds, of course, are also only capital. But we've already talked about how it doesn't really seem like Russ has a ton of defense inside their territory. So it's like if we can break through, the borders, I think we can make pretty good progress against them. So while we're not planning on a war with Russ and would, kind of prefer not to, since I think we have some better options and we would like to help our ally out, it's not the end of the world if we have to fight against Russ. Certainly, I think that would be a better and easier war for us than fighting against Niflheim, which is, kind of our third option. So anyway, to that end, right, we are continuing troop recruitment here, much more infantry, of course, getting more horticulturalists now, because the swarm raiding has worked out, like, decently well, and we have enough other forts now, and we have plenty of augurs here in this fort. That, I do think it's going to be worthwhile to start to build up a stack of these guys. Previously, I was kind of only looking at them as being useful in getting, like, some nature site searching done, like anywhere that our pretender, didn't end up going, and as well as, like, doing, some light forging activities. But now I'm kind of thinking, maybe it would be worthwhile to mass up a good amount of these guys. The fact that they're stealthy is maybe something I wasn't really giving enough credence to. And of course, recruiting Equite in the capital, recruiting some Augur Elders. Let's see if we're recruiting a Throne Mage. Nope, just recruiting Augurs over here. Yeah, I mean, the Throne Mages, especially, like, right, because they're old. So now that we have Burden of Time up, that's going to be extra painful. And at least with our Augur Elders, we can twice-born them. That is not the case with the Throne Mages. So, like, while the Throne Mages can be pretty useful for us, in some ways, like, their time is somewhat coming to a close. They do at least have fire pathing, and there is a fire spell out there that you can use to get rid of disease. So they're not completely useless to us. We will be able to keep them alive if we feel like we want to spend the fire gems on that. And while I said that we didn't really have the death gems to support liches, we are casting Lichcraft this turn, so we're going to bring a lich in. Our income is not great, right? So I think liches are 30 death gems, so like roughly every 3 turns, assuming we don't do anything else with our death gems, which is pretty unlikely, right? Wailing Winds requires death gems. We can see there's actually a scout headed out here with some death gem reloads. So, we definitely have lots of other uses for our death gems, but if we don't use our death gems on anything else and do, a little bit of transmutation of our other gems, we can push out a lich once every 3 turns. Liches are quite useful, so, I don't think this is a, waste of gems, but we're not really going to be able to support them in great numbers. I think that more or less covers it in terms of what we're up to, and I don't think our scouting has really caught anything else interesting that we haven't already talked about. So yeah, I think that more or less covers turn 60.